What is going on, Notre Dame fans? I am Mike Singer of blueandgold.com, and this is Mike Goolsby and Mike Goolsby's dog. What's your dog's name?
Cash.
Cash. That's a great dog name.
For
Um,
this dog, it is. Good to
yeah,
see you, Mike.
yeah. Good to see you. So, yeah, I'm Blue and Gold's recruiting insider, and Mike Goolsby is Mike Goolsby, former Fighting Irish linebacker and captain. Appreciate everyone joining us here live. Make sure you hit that thumbs up for watching back on YouTube. Hit the thumbs up on this video as well. And if you're listening back via podcast, leave us a kind review or something like that. We would certainly appreciate that. This is the Mike Goolsby Show, so we have plenty to talk about with Mr. Goolsby. So Notre Dame makes the Fiesta Bowl, just left out of the college football playoff. Notre Dame is a bridesmaid there, checking in at number 5. So just kind of general thoughts on Notre Dame, their matchup against Oklahoma State. I'm sure you got to see some of the Cowboys game against Baylor. Maybe you did. So just kind of what are you thinking about, the postseason for Notre Dame?
Yeah, I did watch quite a bit of that game, and I always talk about texting buddies. We were one of my sports betting buddies, ex-football buddy. I just kept remarking about how poorly coached Oklahoma State was. I mean, that entire game, that was a wild game to begin with. Just the turnovers and I think in those kind of conference type championship games, I mean, you're always anticipating a little level of kind of consistent chaos, but that game was nuts. I really like our odds in that game. I do. It's going to be interesting to see how the team responds. I mean, we think where the team's going to respond well and be fired up. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. But just in terms of like game management, that'll be, obviously a first time kind of trial by fire for Coach Freeman. But I like the matchup. Especially just in terms of like the rankings. And then it's going to be good for the program because there was a lot of folks, the pundits, the ESPNs of the world, if you will, Mike, that throughout the last 2 to 3 weeks, kind of playing that guessing game of who may or may not make it into that playoff. Consistently, we saw Oklahoma State Cowboys ranked ahead of Notre Dame in terms of like the prognosticator. So this should be fun. To kind of watch this unfold. But I think is on paper, you've got kind of a poorly coached team in Oklahoma State that's playing in a weak Big 12 this year. And obviously, all the turmoil at Oklahoma. You got a weak Big 12. You got the best of in Oklahoma State, and who, in my opinion, is kind of poorly coached versus a well-coached, strong culture program in ND with a brand new head coach. So it's going to be fun to watch, but I think we'll show well. I really do. And I'm excited to see, we'll get into this hopefully, Mike, but what elements of Coach Kelly and his brand of football, if you will, Mike, remain in place? And then what kind of is going to go out the window, specifically on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah. For as much kind of fun of we're making as much fun of that we're making fun of Kelly right now, like, yeah, I mean, he built a strong program, and like, is the grass greener on the other side, with old Southern boy Kelly, who's down in LSU with his family, that just cracks me up so much.
Let's
So
jump into, Mike, can we jump into that real quick? Why not, right? It's my
uh,
show, dude.
yeah, it's your show. You do what the hell you want.
So, first of all, man,
Wait, Mike, I actually, you go ahead. I want to play the audio from that, just in case if anyone hasn't heard it, they can
let's
hear it.
keep it going. Yeah, keep this alive. Let's stretch it out.
Yeah, go ahead. And then I'm pulling it up on my phone right now, and I'll play the
Yeah,
audio.
so I don't know when Coach Kelly addressed the LSU fans at that basketball game. I mean,
I think it was last Wednesday.
like last week was kind of a whirlwind. I know it was for me, Michael. It had to been for you.
Yeah,
But like watching Monday Night Football coverage last night, like Ryan Clark, I think it was after the game, he's still poking fun out of Coach Kelly. So in today's like media coverage world where things are relevant for a day or two and then they go off into the ether, it's interesting to see that like this Coach Kelly in his foghorn, leghorn, southern, fake southern drawl still has legs 3, 4, 5, 6 days later.
All right, everyone, we'll play this in a second. Make sure you're hitting the thumbs up if you're with us. And I see questions coming in on the chats.
Nice.
I will take notes of some of them. We will get to them later in the show, but we are easily bought. So make sure you hit or drop a super chat if you want that right away. But all right, let me. This is
So
something.
this is the weirdest thing where he said, sorry, we're not even into it yet, but Mike, like, I touched on this before, like, it's kind of a sociopathic, narcissistic thing to, like, drop the team and sell out your coaches and all this. And then, like, his first address to the LSU fandom is like, I haven't even won all of my games
That was
yet.
a weird
what a
quote.
Strange thing, dude. That struck me as more bizarre than the fake Southern accent. Sorry, continue.
No, nothing's more bizarre than that.
Thank you. Well, this is a great way to get started. And I haven't even won all my games yet. It's a great night to be a Tiger. I'm here with my family, and we are so excited to be in the great state of Louisiana, but more importantly, to be with you great fans, and to be part of what is going to be an incredible ride here at Louisiana State University.
So here's what I really love about this. LSU, their YouTube page put out like a whole thing. It was like Brian Kelly's first day at LSU. And it's like a 5-minute video. And it's him like, seeing the Tiger on campus and doing all these things. And normal Brian Kelly speak. And then they play his time at that basketball game. And it's like, how he sounds so much different.
It's fun to poke fun at, and I think we're all sort of guilty of that. I mean, we're all a little bit of a social chameleon when you get around different types of folks. Like, you might alter your personality or topic, subject matter you discuss, etc. So I don't beat him up too much, but I have listened to a few of his media snippets and things, and there doesn't really, and it's fun to contrast that with what Coach Freeman is sort of delivering, and what Coach Freeman is saying seems to carry much more weight and be more authentic. We're obviously biased. I'm biased. I saw Coach Reese sort of retweeted today, like, gosh, you'd have to pull up his tweet, Mike, but he was like, you don't get more authentic than this. Who wouldn't want to play for this man? And, I've said throughout Kelly's tenure, like even leading up to the end, he just never struck me as an authentic personality. So some of these shots, like, not that maybe that's a thinly veiled shot by Coach Reese, but dropping in that little kind of sniper shot about being authentic, right?
Yeah,
there
for
you
YouTube.
go.
Yeah, here's what he said. Authenticity has never been higher. How could you not want to play for this man? And this was
classy. And then for that, such a classy thing, dude.
The Players Tribune article he wrote.
Again, the contrast is so stark.
Yeah.
Between he and Kelly.
Yeah.
So, so that's, we got to realize, Mike, that there's going to be a come down from this high of the higher.
Sure.
And, as I was driving home thinking about doing this podcast, I'm like, we know it's going to come, and but at the same time, let's enjoy this. Let's enjoy this high. I mean,
sure.
that's why we're fans of sports. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, look, I wouldn't have called myself a Kelly guy, but like, I was very much in support of Brian Kelly and what he was doing at Notre Dame. But I mean, I think it's very fair to kind of, point and laugh a little bit right now, Mike. I mean, I just popped up Twitter to show that that Reese tweet. How about this? DeColdis Crawford, 4-star wide receiver, just decommitted from LSU. I mean, look at the timestamp there. 6 minutes ago. Their starting quarterback just transferred, and his younger brother is a 4-star tight end commit. He's just decommitted from LSU. And I think this is a fine transition to segue into talking about the Notre Dame assistants that for the 2021 season and who is staying and who is going. So, Mike, I'll just kind of run through these real quick, and then you can kind of give me your thoughts at the end, or if you want to interrupt me, just go ahead. So, all right, up on the screen for YouTube, Marcus Freeman, obviously elevated from defensive coordinator to head coach. Brian Polian, we reported at blueandgold.com today that his last day at Notre Dame, that's come and gone. He will be accepting a position at LSU. We don't know exactly in what role, but Brian Kelly loves Brian Polian, so Polian will be in some kind of right-hand man capacity. And what I'd been hearing on Polian for a long time was that he wants to be a head coach. He did not get that opportunity in this carousel. Lafayette and Delaware were the
Polian's
two.
not a head coach material, by the way, but a great fit. Another great fit down at LSU, Brian Polian.
In what way, Mike?
I'm being completely sarcastic.
Tommy Rees, someone who Coach Kelly wanted, did not get. And Mike, I wasn't sure, is Tommy Rees a Brian Kelly guy who recruited him and he played for and coach under and was elevated from quarterbacks coach? I mean, heck, taken, I think before Notre Dame quarterbacks coach, he was a GA with the Chargers. So, I mean, Kelly was, obviously such a huge part of his career, turns down LSU for Notre Dame. What was your thoughts on that, Mike?
Not surprised. I wasn't surprised. I think it's going to be going kind of flip-flopping back in terms of staff updates and the upcoming Fiesta Bowl. It's going to be nobody on that staff potentially, Mike, outside of Coach Elston, knows Brian Kelly's culture and brand and kind of like the framework better than Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees came up as a quarterback in that culture. So I feel like Coach Freeman, in a way, maybe has to lean on Coach Rees, because it's like, to me, it's like you take the current framework and the structure and the culture that Kelly eventually built, and then we just kind of sprinkle in, hopefully down the road, a few more talented players at a few given positions. But no, I'm not surprised. I think there's something really special going on at Notre Dame, and I know this is all business and yada yada, but football is a special sport in that way, like the brotherhood piece of it all. And I think Rees wants to be a part of it. And I think it's great, but no, I'm not really surprised.
Yeah. Quick note, shout out.
I think in terms of the play calling, Mike, I would hope, fingers crossed, that some of those, like the handcuffs will be off or the training wheels will be off. So this will be fun to see if we see a few more chunk plays, a little bit more explosive style going forward.
Yeah, a comment here from Vikes1414 says, I think Tom Lee just generally loves Notre Dame and didn't take much to stay. Yeah, I think he there's a line drawn in the sand. He picked Notre Dame over Brian Kelly. And as we all know, Notre Dame's a pretty special place. So I understand that. So quick shout out, Bolton Landing Brewing Company, for my beer tonight. It's an IPA. It's
Are you getting more beer in the mail and I'm not, or is that still the same?
No, it's still the same beer. So yeah, I only drink it when I'm on the show. And dude, I wish
I could say the same, dude.
I am sniffling up a storm. I've been sick for a few days, so I
wanted to touch on this before we get into the staff thing and dive into that. Like, another just thing about Coach Freeman, you're seeing in all these consistent interviews, and I'm like, that poor guy, can he get a nap? And I would say the same thing to you, like. Two hardworking dudes, but to have the level of composure that he's had, and I mean, I can hardly do my job and all the things that I've got, plus this podcast. So kudos to both you and Coach Freeman, Mike.
Oh, well, I appreciate you making time. Yeah, I mean,
close 1 and 2.
Yeah, right. Freeman, introduced as head coach during the press conference at 2 p.m. By 4 p.m., he's on a private jet, going to see Billy Strouth, the 4-star offensive lineman in Wisconsin. Right after that, went and played golf. No, of course he didn't go play golf. Went to the Pacific Northwest to go recruit a receiver, commit. Obviously, just because he's committed doesn't mean he can't flip. And then today he's on the West Coast. I think seeing 5 different commits, trying to keep them locked in. By the way, saw some comments about this. We had this changed for people on YouTube. This used to be a picture of Brian Kelly, and we got this swapped out for a picture of Marcus Freeman.
Nice
okay,
work.
Continuing on. How about another guy who was kind of, is he a Kelly guy or is he a Notre Dame guy? Mike Elston, defensive line coach, recruiting coordinator, and defensive run game coordinator. Been with Brian Kelly, I think it's for the last 16 or 17 years. We report at blueandgold.com, he's sticking, and he tweeted out, he's sticking with Notre Dame. I'm not even sure he's getting elevated to defensive coordinator, Mike. I think a big part of Elston sticking at Notre Dame, and this kind of goes for a lot of these coaches on the second point. First point being his family. I mean, like, he has a lot of kids, like, didn't want to move them, out of South Bend. Like, I believe his family really loves it there. But 2, LSU is just a lot different than Notre Dame. I mean, talking to various sources, some of those Notre Dame coaches, I mean, they might have made more money at LSU, but, like, they don't know recruiting down there. A lot of these guys haven't lived in the South like that. So, I mean, it's just a different world down there, Mike. Any thoughts there?
And I think the Coach Freeman, in so many of his spots that he's done, media spots, etc., like, it seems like I heard him say, like, my comfort zone is with my players, with the players. Like, I think he's like, you guys are tremendous thinkers and workers, and he said most of you don't, and I'm just paraphrasing, but most of you don't take any shortcuts and things like that. So again, that's a testament to Notre Dame in general, right? The types of kids, I told you when I was recruited, I had to go back and I had to bump my ACT score up, and I had to go back and take a 4th year math with my high school curriculum to get into Notre Dame. I was willing to do that. A lot of kids that are going to go to an LSU aren't going to do that, right? So these coaches, I think they realize they've been other places. They realize how blessed they are to have a bunch of responsible young men. And I get it, dude. I get it.
Yeah. Notre Dame fans watching live with us, please hit the thumbs up, drop a super chat if you want your question answered right away. Otherwise, we will get to those here in a little bit. So moving on with the running backs, Coach Lance Taylor being retained was a big one for me, Mike, because, I mean, I feel like he's going into his, so what he got here in 2019. So this will be his 4th season at Notre Dame. And I feel like it's kind of like a rule of 3 years. Typically, it's like you hit your 3rd year as an assistant coach, and you're typically going on some other job because you're A, going to move up, or B, you're a scapegoat, or you're not cutting it or something. Like, Lance Taylor is a coordinator. Like, I in my opinion, like, he should be a coordinator somewhere at the Group of 5 or Power 5 level. And the past 2 off seasons, including this one, drop a little nugget there, he's interviewed for head coaching jobs at the Group of 5 level even. So, I mean, this is a darn good running backs coach. He's built a really strong camaraderie in that room. It was a big time keep for Notre Dame. Del Alexander, receivers coach for Notre Dame, have not reported the kind of final decision on him yet, whether he's staying or going. All of these guys are coaching unless, like a Polian, like where he's gone, like there's going to be an interim special teams coach who I believe is Nick Lazinski, who spent a lot of time with the Rovers, I believe, in the past couple of years.
No, Coach Alexander needs to go.
Why, Mike?
Well, one, look at the decimation of our wide receiver room. It's just like there's not a lot of bodies in there, so there could be a personality conflict in terms of like his coaching style. And then we've had like some stud wide receivers, but the length of time that it takes for them to develop is too long. It just is, right? And then you see in this year, like you can plug in young talent, young athletes at that position, and they can produce, right? So you shouldn't have to it shouldn't take you 3 years to earn a coach's trust. So that to me, like as an ex-player, like if it takes a receiver, and there's not as much to like a receiver, corner, running back, those are easier positions to play early, right? Just in terms of like, it just is. There's not so much to learn. You don't have to physically develop, right? If it takes that long, 3 to 4 years for a 4-star type receiver to get on the field, that to me as an ex-player, like it speaks a little bit to like a coach's insecurity level. Like I can't put him out there until I know that he knows. Like I'm 100% confident he's not going to screw up. Versus there's just a different way to go about it. It shouldn't take 3 years, and that's just. I don't mean to like throw any arrows or anything like that, Mike, but it just speaks to like a certain level of insecurity. Like he's not ready yet. Well, why isn't he ready yet? Because like you haven't coached him up yet, and then you're afraid that if he goes out there and screws up, it's going to reflect poorly on you. There's something to that, Mike.
Sure. All right, moving along. John McNulty, tight ends coach, sticking at Notre Dame.
Big fan.
Yes, good dude.
And I think Coach McNulty, I've spoke to him more than once. I think he's an ex-NFL guy, right? I think Coach McNulty realizes how special of a place Notre Dame is, and the tight end he can kind of step into that role. Big fan of keeping him. Really good dude.
Mike Mickens, childhood friend of Marcus Freeman, staying at Notre Dame. Not a surprise. And Chris O'Leary, safeties coach, very close with those guys. Also staying at Notre Dame, not a surprise. Jeff Quinn has coached with Brian Kelly for about, I think it's 33 years. So I can't imagine he's staying at Notre Dame. I mean, if someone's a Brian Kelly guy, it's Jeff Quinn. And does Notre Dame even want to move in a different direction? Like, do you want the, ghost of Brian Kelly, hanging around the halls? So I would expect Quinn to be one that is not there.
Mike, quick question just for myself and viewers and listeners. So Coach Quinn, is he or isn't he currently employed by the University of Notre Dame?
You asking me?
Yes.
I can't answer that. What I can say, when I say can't answer, that's like I got some secret information. I don't know. But I have not been able to gather the whereabouts of him on the recruiting trail this week.
Got it. Okay.
I think you can kind of read in between the lines on that,
Fair.
But I am not. I mean, they went to see Billy Schrouth, who I mentioned earlier in the show, last Thursday and yesterday. I did not hear about Quinn being there.
So if you're reading the tea leaves, that makes sense. But then it makes you wonder what's taken so long for him to get down to LSU. Because you would assume, right, like he would go follow Coach Kelly, but if he hasn't, maybe he doesn't even want to go down to LSU and follow Coach. Maybe he's looking for a job outside of Notre Dame,
maybe,
or LSU. Interesting.
Yeah, and here's one that I think you can talk about being important. Matt Bayless, title director of football performance, aka strength coach. I have quoted, you spend your most time with the strength and conditioning coach. So how important for this is Matt Bayless, and do you have any insights on him? Because he is raved about among the Notre Dame football players. That was a big deal.
How long, Mike, before I get into it, do you know offhand how long Coach Bayless has been there?
I can scroll down and tell you. Since 2017, he has been the director of football performance.
So I think I alluded to this once before. We're giving Coach Kelly, if anything, credit for building the culture. We know now, no matter how sketchy the game starts out, or, like this season, it was great evidence. Like we built a culture the kids know how to win. They've got the mental toughness to see things through, etc. I feel like maybe we're giving Coach Kelly a little bit of undue credit. Maybe some of that credit should be shared with Coach Bayless. I feel like when the Notre Dame football program really started to ascend the last 3-4 years, I feel like there's the hire of Coach Bayless has a lot to do with that, as much, if not more, than Coach Kelly. Now, kudos to Kelly for bringing him on board. Yes, he's done a great job. And, dude, I watched that. I love football, Mike, if you don't know. I watched that Man in the Arena last night, the Tom Brady deal, the Tom Brady documentary, and I had like tears coming down my face, right? It's like, because it's just like, again, it's a special sport, keeping that the coaching brotherhood, like the things that we were touching on earlier in this evening's podcast. And when I heard Coach Bayless address the team and say that he wants to die there,
Yeah,
I was just like, dude, like that's to me what it's about, and that's what makes the sport so good. It's just like, and you believe him. Like when a strength coach like that with that voice, his voice has been shot for probably 20 years. Like you believe it, and that's the stuff. Like as an ex-player, like personally, dude, like I miss it. You miss that kind of stuff.
yeah. Appreciate everyone live with us. If you just joined recently, make sure you hit that thumbs up on this YouTube video. Subscribe to our channel if you have not yet. Speaking of, Bayless got there in 2017. Helped turn the program around. This is going to be a very popular comments with Notre Dame fans. How about this guy? Also got to Notre Dame in 2017. Del Alexander. I'm just kidding. I don't. I don't think Del Alexander is been the reason Notre Dame football turned around. All right, maybe that wasn't a good joke. Mike's kind of.
No, it's good.
Yeah, it's okay.
Just I think Coach Alexander will be coaching elsewhere. It's you've heard some whispers about Coach Freeman potentially bringing his ex-teammate and Brian Hartline over, trying to bring him over from Ohio State. That'd be fun.
Couple of super chat. Oh yeah, we actually have comments about that.
This is all about getting to the NFL, right? From a kid's perspective, from a recruit's perspective. Sorry, Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple super chats. John says Freeman will get the alumni players involved, and how great will that be for recruiting current and past pros on the sidelines with recruits. It's always good to see, like the USC game. You had Chase Claypool. I think Joe Theismann was at a game this year. Like Jerome Bettis was at the USC game. Thoughts on that, Mike? Is that a big deal?
I think it's it's definitely a big deal. Notre Dame's interesting because it's not like it doesn't seem that our NFL guys aren't like marquee top 10 picks like when you think of the U, but like we've got tons of dudes in the NFL. We had a tight end catch a touchdown yesterday or on Sunday.
Yeah, Brock Wright. He caught one in his Notre Dame career, I think.
Right? So it's like, and Brock Wright, off the top of my head, was a 6th-round pick, right? It's been in the league for like 4 years. We have so many of those dudes. So the Jerome Bettises, the Tim Browns of the world, you absolutely have to get them back. But I think it's important to show recruits that there's only going to be 32 first-round picks. We have X number of guys that were a 3rd-round pick, a 5th-round pick, that have built careers in the NFL. So yes, it's important. It's important for us as football alum to feel welcome, to get back into that family, just so we can catch a whiff of some of that culture. And yeah, I think it serves both sides. I think it serves the recruits in the current football program, and it makes alums feel warm and fuzzy too. Yeah. It's all good.
Yeah. Quick note, going back to the coaches. We kind of talked about with Reese and Elson, they picked Notre Dame over LSU. How about everyone Notre Dame wanted there, they got? That speaks to something. And yes, also to the point of LSU, that's a different world down there, but also their love for Notre Dame and their belief in Marcus Freeman. Those are real things. If you wanted to touch on that, Mike.
It's just incredibly rare. It's incredibly rare with all the money being thrown around in the college football world. And it goes back to that tweet from Tommy Reese and what we've been kind of saying about Coach Freeman, that authenticity. And we've said this before on the show, Mike, real recognizes real. And I think if Coach Freeman, wasn't authentic, I think that would have been snuffed out by this point.
Yeah.
So it's going to be exciting. And yes, it's incredibly rare. And frankly, I'm jealous that like you're not closer to it, because it's going to be really, really interesting to watch this program over the next 3 to 4 years.
Exciting is definitely it's or no, maybe better word than exciting to describe it is interesting. Notre Dame football is going to be very interesting, going to have a lot of swagger to it. Swagger is not a word you just use to describe Brian Kelly's tenure at Notre Dame, but it was more of consistency. So it's going to be interesting for sure. How about this super chat from Greg Ladkey? Not sure who that is. Kidding, of course. That is Blue and Gold's Greg Ladkey. Dropping a $10 super chat. Okay, Greg, I see you. He says Goolsby has watched Marcus Freeman closely. How would he have responded to him as a recruit? Pictures and home visits, seeing the videos we see today, understanding the social media aspect isn't there. So how would you have responded to Marcus Freeman if he was recruiting you?
I mean, I'd have ate it up. Double spoons. I'm eating it up. Greg, to answer your question, I'm almost 40 and I can't get enough of it. So if I'm a 17-year-old recruit, yeah, I think it would have only been more so. I truly believe he's an authentic guy. I think he's a natural leader. And there's the only knock on him is the age and the fact that he hasn't been a head coach, but he came from was a 5-star recruit, understands what that experience is like, right? And those are the kids that we all want to, quote unquote, to target. He's been a 5-star recruit, played at a high level, marquee program in Ohio State. He's been through the draft process, and this is all I'm just trying to create. Sort of the pitch here, Greg. Played at a marquee school, went through the draft process. He's still young. I mean, it's a home run, and then they're as close to a home run as you can find. And then the other thing, man, who had the quote? Is it Jimmy Johnson? It's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmys and the Joes. Football ain't that complicated, Mike. It's like it can be, but it's really not. And if I've got a bigger, faster athlete than you do, I like my odds. So we just need to enhance the level of talent at a couple different positions. Probably the receiver position, the defensive back position, the quarterback position. But yes, I would have ate it up to answer Greg's question.
Okay. All right. I have one more question for you. Then we'll get straight into Q&A. And make sure if you want to guarantee that we answer your question, drop a super chat. We'll get to it as soon as we can. For this bowl game versus Oklahoma State, what do you want to see differently? I mean, do you think any training wheels will be taken off of anyone with Brian Kelly's absence? Let's talk about Tyler Buckner. What do you want to see from him? Could be a good opportunity for a coming out game for him. Do you want to see Drew Pine? Like, what are some things you want to see differently in this bowl game that maybe we haven't seen?
So what do I want to see? Let's just say, what do we want to see? Not necessarily differently, but you want to see the same level of execution, the same level of game management, substitutions, etc. Like, you want it to be a clean operation, right? Because that would be, and I think that should be first and foremost. Secondly, I think that Coach Freeman, and him jumping on a plane and going to Wisconsin, then going out to the West Coast, I think having played at Ohio State, I think his main focus is recruiting and his talent acquisition. So I would hope that he utilizes this bowl game as an exhibition in a lot of ways, Mike. So this is the type of ball we're going to play. This is our brand of football at Notre Dame. So I would hope that, yes, some of the training wheels come off on the offensive side of the ball and we let it fly. I'm super appreciative of Jack Cohn and what he's done for the football program and just sort of being a steady guiding force for us this year. But going back to that thought of using this as an opportunity to showcase the new brand or the new style of Notre Dame football, maybe, I think Tyler Buckner and or Drew Pine gives us a better chance of doing that, right? So if we're trying to go get these receivers and we're trying to go after these elite level quarterbacks, come here. This is the type of ball we can play, and we're going to play going forward. So I just think that Coach Freeman, hopefully, or I hope that he looks at the game in that fashion, and we don't want to squander that opportunity to do so.
Sure. All right, we'll get into questions. Question here about Xavier Wonkba, 5-star safety from Iowa. Is he going to Notre Dame? I would be shocked. I think he's essentially turned Notre Dame down twice at this point. Notre Dame has worked their asses off in this recruitment. Just not all kids want to go to Notre Dame. He doesn't. So that's basically that one. Mike, question here. This was from earlier in the show when you're talking about Oklahoma State being a poorly coached team. Let's go back to that. SGC asks, what determines a poorly coached team?
Poor execution.
Not playing good.
It's poor. So who's the best coach in the NFL, Mike?
Bill Belichick.
Bill Belichick, maybe the best coach ever. Like Nick Saban's the best coach in college football. I mean, and there's no penalties. There's not an exorbitant amount of penalties. There's no real drop balls. They execute. And like you go back, I mean, if you can find that game on a DVR somewhere, the Oklahoma State Baylor game, it's just poorly coached. It's just looked like a freaking turkey bowl, like backyard football. And I've said that I think there does need to be a little bit of an element of some magic, like with a Tyler Buckner type athlete at the quarterback position. But it just seemed like just poorly coached football. It was just poor execution. And it was just kind of like, I don't. That's a poor answer, but that's the best answer I could give you is just poor execution, no real identity, and it just seems like like sheets in the wind. It was just kind of chaos. So Notre Dame's brand of football, responsible, kind of yeoman-like, business-like approach. It should serve us well against a kind of a loosey-goosey program or team like Oklahoma State is this year.
Yeah. Quick comment from SDS123. She says, I believe this is she because she's a poster on our message board. This show is never long enough for me. I love the perspectives and player insights. SDS, we appreciate.
Yeah, sometimes I feel the same way, Mike. Sometimes I feel like you're trying to usher me out of here. You hit that 40-minute mark and I've got a little gas left in the tank some days.
I thought you were just stopping
I
at your
agree,
little gas.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Singer's got things to do. He's got articles to write, and I got 2 more articles to write tonight. One to post tonight, and then one to write for the morning. So I'm gassed, and we appreciate it. This show will be here for as long as Mike wants to have it, and we are committed to blueandgold.com and everything that has happened in the future past January 1. So wink, wink. Exciting stuff coming around the corner. For Blue and Gold. Question from Sean. What's your confidence on Justin Rett committing to Notre Dame on Saturday? Talking about the 4-star cornerback from Bishop Gorman out in Vegas in the 2023 class. He's stealing some recruits' thunder in the 2022 class with them committing, a few days before signing day. I like Notre Dame for him right now. We will see. He decides on Saturday, but that would be a huge get. Top 50 type player nationally. I've seen him in person twice. Yeah, he would be a monstrous land for the Fighting Irish. He's got a top 5 of Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Tennessee. It's not a bad quintet to have. Brian asks, is there any chance Brian Hartline joins the staff? I was essentially told that was a long shot. And another example of Marcus Freeman shooting for the stars. I don't know if you have any comment on that. I mean, it would be hard to see Brian Hartline moving laterally unless it was for a huge money.
Is there a chance? Yes. Is it likely? You know better than me, bud. But it's the appeal just because of the number of guys that Ohio State's put in the NFL. It'd be a nice kind of recruiting angle.
Yeah. All right, this is a really interesting comment from Jeff. Position. He says, it's crazy to think Notre Dame football is run by an Ohio State guy, Marcus Freeman, a Michigan guy, Mike Gelliston, Notre Dame guy, Tommy Reese. We can keep this going further. How about Lance Taylor, Alabama? That's where he played. I'm pretty sure he played at Alabama. I know he at least coached. He was a GA under Nick Saban about 13 years ago. John McNulty played at Penn State. Got Mike Mickens, Cincinnati. Kind of all of these, Notre Dame rivals in some senses. So,
Yeah, the wisdom of crowds, Mike, is a book I read once. Not a big reader, surprisingly, but yeah, that accumulation of different backgrounds, experiences. That's how you find the best answer. That's how you find a good product. So you don't want to have everybody coming out of the same sort of thought silo. So marquee programs, absolutely. And then the NFL experience too kind of resonates with me in regards to, again, all I'm thinking with the Freeman hire is recruiting. So a few of those guys have NFL weaved into their backgrounds as well, which is a big plus.
yeah. All right, scrolling through some of the comments here. Make sure you drop some more, and we'll go for a little bit longer. Blake asks, is Dell Alexander going to be on staff next year? They're bringing a new wide receivers coach. Kind of talked about that a little bit earlier.
Ideally, no, he's not on staff, in my opinion.
So this is a tricky thing. How has Dell been as a recruiter? You can look at this two ways. One, the 2021 class of Lorenzo Styles and Dion Colsey and Jaden Thomas. I mean, those first two guys are already, seen a lot of playing time, and Lorenzo Styles is a big-time player. And, I mean, Dell's the receivers coach, recruited him. The 2022 class, we'll see how they hold on to him. I don't remember how much you've seen of these guys, Mike. CJ Williams is a borderline 5-star talent in my opinion. Tobias Merriweather is a darn good receiver up in the Pacific Northwest. Speedster, 6'4", 180 pounds. And Amarion Walker, he has really high upside. He can be a special player. So it's like, just past couple classes have been really good. We'll see how it finishes in the 2022 cycle. And some key visits here this week with the Notre Dame staff going in home with these guys. But then you go back to the 2020 recruiting class. Jordan Johnson, the 5-star at UCF, doing nothing. Jay Brunell, I think he's playing at an Ivy League school. Xavier Watts is on defense now. 2019 receiver class was Kendall Abdul-Rahman. I think he's at an FCS school. I don't remember. And Cam Hart, who's a corner. So it's like that's their lack of receiver depth this year. I mean, definitely decimated by injuries, but go ahead, Mike.
There's a point. So like Dion Colsey, right? He played at a pretty prestigious high school program, kind of a high academic, right?
Yeah.
So
Academy, yeah.
I think the challenge is going to be on the edge positions, specifically at corner and receiver. And gosh, Mike, I'm having like deja vu because I just remember talking about this after some games previously, and how important speed at the edges and getting unique type talents at the edges is going to be. So like if you look at like some of these kids, like a Dion Colsey we'll use as the case study here, he's already a high academic kid. He's a pretty good wide receiver. It's just a natural sort of fit for him to land at Notre Dame. So I wouldn't call that, like, in my estimation, like good recruiting. So I think it's going to take a Marcus Freeman to somehow like go sort of motivate some of these borderline-ish type athletes to maybe bump the academics up or bump the test score to come play for him at Notre Dame. If that makes any sense, because sometimes we go after these kids, it's like, oh, because it's just a natural plug and play with the academic kind of requirement deal. So for me a recruiter is like you're selling the program. You're only a junior. If you can get that GPA up or whatever, we want to keep you in the conversation. That's where I hope Coach Freeman. I'm gonna have to get used to saying Coach Freeman. I keep wanting to say Coach Kelly with Coach Freeman, where he can do that. And then like another little, I got to give you a conspiracy theory, Mike.
Go ahead. Oh, I love conspiracy theories from Goolsby.
It's not a conspiracy theory, but like I've heard Coach Freeman say in as many days, more than once, Notre Dame will change you if you let it. And I'm just like, is there some sort of like hidden messaging in that, in terms of maybe a kid is a 2.9 GPA or a 3.0 GPA, and like there might be something to that, like where he's like a wink wink, whereas like maybe you're not a home run academic fit right now, but we still want you to become a part of this program because it'll change you if you let it. Maybe there's something to that. I hope there is, Mike.
Okay. I've heard an instance already. I love dropping nuggets on our YouTube show. I almost said Brian Kelly. Marcus Freeman's been head coach for, like 4 days or something? I've already heard of an instance where I think normally Notre Dame would have stopped recruiting a kid because of academics, but they worked with the kid. So I'm already seeing a difference there. And again, in 4 days. So that's something you've been saying since we started. I mean, you joined us, March of 2020? That's something you've been pretty vocal.
So can we just walk that out a little bit further?
Sure.
So like, Mike, you know better than me in terms of what the range is. What's the low end range of what Notre Dame's looking for in terms of Can you touch on that at all?
No, I mean,
traditionally speaking,
I don't know. And I would say above a 3.0, you need some good test scores, but I mean, maybe 3.3, 3.4, somewhere around there, GPA.
That's ideal, right?
Sure.
Okay. So what we were talking about, or what I was begging for, and is if a kid has a 2.8 after his sophomore year of high school, he's right there. I mean, that's a matter of taking a summer school class, turning a B- into a B+, right? I mean, just marginal improvement can get you over the hump. And we've said this before, Mike, that I wish, and it sounds like Coach Freeman's doing so, to dangle that carrot to a kid and just say, man, you're so close, and recruit them throughout, or give the kid 6 months, recruit him for 6 months and see if the improvement comes, versus he's got a 2.8 or throwing his resume in the trash. That's no way to grow a program. And gosh, that makes me feel good to hear that Coach Freeman's kind of made that shift.
Comment here says Goolsby always drops some insightful wisdom no one else thinks of at least once a show. So, and Christopher says, need a Goolsby conspiracy theory segment. And Mike, you're the GOAT.
I try. There's so many talking heads out there, Mike, and in the media. They get paid more than you and I do to do this stuff. And yeah, just try and find a different angle. And I appreciate somebody acknowledging that. Absolutely.
All right. A little bit of a out of the honeymoon phase here. Question from Jamie, another big support of yours, Mike, in our show. Does it make sense to wait and see if Freeman can win some football games before anointing him as the second coming of Vince Lombardi? I mean, of course the answer is yes, but we're also not anointing him Vince Lombardi. Come on, Jamie. I know you know we're not doing that.
I'm sure Jamie's a lot of fun at parties, Mike.
I think he might be.
Jamie, it's fair to pump the brakes a little bit and to be realistic, but at the same time, we've got almost a month to enjoy this kind of this buzz and just soak it in. And it's going to be, there's going to be some mistakes along the way, but I just keep going back to it. And like, if Jamie's a Notre Dame fan, he's been watching for a decade or so, the big games, the marquee games that we lose, it's because Kelly doesn't get the team up. And I think that's due to him not acknowledging the fact that this is a big effing game. Okay. I think that Freeman will do so because he's, again, closer to being a player than there's a 25-year age difference there between Freeman and. So I think that the team will get up, and then also, fingers crossed, we can recruit some special athletes at particular positions where we've fallen short in the past. So, and then from there, it's just X's and O's and execution. And the framework that Coach Kelly and Coach Bayless have already established, we don't want to change much of it, folks. It's just sprinkle in a couple more athletes and maybe have a little bit more mojo, a little bit more swagger, and then off we go. And maybe find, or maybe we have one in Buckner, but find a special quarterback. And those restraints of Coach Kelly's kind of conservative approach on offense are hopefully gone, and Coach Reese can flex a little bit. That's how I see it. I mean, it's definitely a time, Jamie, to be And that's coming from I'm more of a pessimist by nature, but this is the time to just enjoy the ride and enjoy the optimism.
Comment here says you win a title at LSU, that's great. But if you win a title at Notre Dame, you're a legend. I mean, literally, Coach O won one a couple years ago, and now he's not employed by the Tigers anymore. So, yeah, if you win a title at Notre Dame, you are a legend. I mean, that's it's not an easy thing to do. Any comments there, Mike?
I totally agree. And what the ask is of a Notre Dame football player, a Notre Dame head coach, like to be the number 5 ranked team in the country, given the climate of college football and our academic standards. And it's almost like a Notre Dame football player and like the standard, it's almost like you're at like an academy in terms of all the responsibilities and having to go to class and having to do all these things. And then also to be able to put out a top 5, top 10 product on the field is remarkable. So yes, legend status. And it's interesting that Notre Dame is such a polarizing program that, like, you know this, Mike, folks hate Notre Dame or they love Notre Dame. Nobody has that strong, shouldn't say nobody, but not that many. I don't think there's folks out there that have as strong of a sentiment about an LSU as they do about Notre Dame. So people love to hate Notre Dame.
Yeah, unless you're an Alabama fan or, something like that. But, like, yeah, just Joe Schmo walking down the street and, Texas or North Carolina and might hate Notre Dame just because of some game.
Just because. So, and the reason that they hate I feel like, is that Notre Dame should have more fans because of the way that they run the program, the way they develop the kids, as Coach Freeman's talked about. So, yes, legend status, national following, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Question here. Any thoughts about where Notre Dame might look to fill positions from the transfer portal? I'll say they'll probably get a guy or two from the portal.
Andres kind of looks like Tyler Buckner if you look at that picture real quick.
Yeah, a couple good-looking kids. There you go, Andres.
Absolutely.
So, I think safety is possible. I think they, need another rotational player, especially Kyle Hamilton out. I don't know. I mean, I'm very much a best available kind of guy in the transfer portal. How about this, Mike? What about quarterback?
Absolutely.
It's not crazy to say quarterback.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna need something for depth. I saw Indiana's quarterback, who I think is a graduate guy. He's had 4 season-ending injuries. Like, that'd be a guy. I've never seen him play. I just saw it on the ticker. But yeah, quarterback position. Given the right personality kind of profile and that he understands maybe why they're coming to Notre Dame to sort of help groom Buckner. But I don't know if we're going to look for a starter. I think that could kind of retard his development in terms of getting those reps,
Yeah. Getting text messages during our show. Todd Burlage, one of our contributors at Blue and Gold, says, I'm trying to send a question. Not sure I'm doing it right. Todd, you are not. Says Freeman's first 2 challenges are winning an Elite Bowl, first since 1993, and then playing Ohio State opener next season. Mike, I mean, what kind of challenge is that going? He's playing a couple of OSU's first couple games. I mean, can you imagine the storylines and College Game Day for sure, being at the shoe for Freeman's return to Ohio State? How special of a game is that going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be a great atmosphere. Again, a huge potential recruiting tool. Coach Freeman's first challenge, though, to me, is going to be able to draw a line of delineation between he as a head coach and vibing with the players. Like he said in one of his recent press conferences, like, I'm one of them, like, we're one and the same. And I think we talked about this on a previous podcast, but yeah, he's got to elevate himself to be like, I'm one of you, and we all, we're all working through this together, but I'm the head coach now. So that's in terms of, like, they have his respect and all that, but he's not a peer. He's the head coach. That's going to be the big challenge to me, just given his age in particular. But yes, huge recruiting. But I mean, Ohio State lost an early game to Oregon this year, and it was like for Oregon, it was a 9 a.m. kickoff, and they lost at at the Horseshoe or whatever they call it. So Ohio State's not Alabama. It's just not.
Eric says Notre Dame needs a right guard for Marshall. Making a joke about Kane Madden.
You need a right guard for Marshall like I need a hole in the head, Eric.
Mike, do you have 1 year of eligibility left? Question from Sean.
No. It's funny. Over the years, people will ask, like, and I'm sure all ex-football players get asked that, like, do you miss it? And I missed playing until I got old enough where I was like, there's no chance, because you'd be like 29 and be like still having a dream about playing football. It's like, I could still do it. Maybe you could, like, for a series, but I'm 39 and no, I'd be tearing Achilles. I already tore my bicep, like, no chance. So even if I did have one, I think I'd be a waste of a scholarship.
All right. Question. This is an interesting one. Joe Alt, president of his fan club. Hello. Or Blake Fisher. Which one do you start at left tackle next year? What if someone like Josh Lugg comes back, who's the right tackle for this team? Do you slide Fisher inside? Like, what do you do? Because Fisher was a really good left tackle, and so is Joe.
Was he though? He only played a half of football. I think.
Okay. All of fall camp, he was really good. But
what's that?
He was really good all of fall camp. Spring ball clips we saw. But yeah, the staff thought he was the best left tackle. But then they also didn't play Joe Alt until halfway through the season, and he's been really.
Have you forgiven him for that yet, Mike?
Dude, I didn't think Joe Alt was going to be this good. I talked to his dad the other day, and he was like, he basically said, excuse me, I didn't think he was going to be this good either. The kid is just
kudos to dad for those genetics and the coaching.
Seriously.
My projection would be Alt remains your left tackle, and I think that Fisher moves over to the right side.
Okay.
I think one of Fisher's key traits as a player, as a prospect, is his size, just the sheer size. And that's not at all a knock on his athleticism, but I could just see him slide into the right-hand side and then it'd be unfair to Alt because I told you, Mike, I thought Alt was like our mid-season MVP just because I could say once they inserted him, like, we started to run an offense.
Yeah.
Sort of stop the bleeding. So I feel like Alt becomes your left tackle, maybe a slightly better athlete, maybe slightly better foot speed, and then you just have a mountain of a man on the right-hand side. Moment
the season kind of shifted was the Virginia Tech game when they put Cohn back in at the end of the game, and he led them down that the game-winning drive. At least I remember it being a game-winning drive. My memory sucks if it's not about recruiting.
Oh, mine's worse.
I feel like that's kind of when I know, like, Cohn led them down and they won that game because they were not about to win, and that's where it changed. That just popped in my head.
Either way, however it works out, if Alt's on the left, Fisher's on the right, or we flip-flop it, there's a boatload of talent there for the next 3-4 years.
Yeah, plenty of really talented.
But that's my projection: is Blake will be on the right and Joe will be on the left.
All right. Couple more things before we get out of here.
A couple more here, Mike.
If you want a question, we went over 40 minutes. Did that just for you, Mr. Goolsby. If you want a question answered real quick, drop super chat. We'll get to it. Otherwise, here are a couple questions. Goolsby, would you come back to coach the linebackers? This is something we get a good bit.
Yes.
I
think I could do it. Yeah.
You don't have anything else to say? You just think you can?
No, that's the answer.
Does Freeman win a national championship? If so, how long until now? Mike, pull out your crystal ball. What do you got? When does Notre Dame win a national championship?
I would say, like, gosh, anytime you try and make a prediction like this, you just get crucified, or I do, right, Mike? But I think like 1 to 3 years, I really do, because there's so much. Like, help me walk through this, Mike. We'll start with Clemson, right? we'll see what DJ Uiagalelei turned into as a quarterback, but they just lost a pillar of their program and Coach Venables, right? And maybe they lose some recruits, the Brian Breezes of the world or whatever. Like, Clemson's down. Ohio State, we'll wait and see, but it seems like Michigan might be climbing and Ohio State might be slipping a little bit. Bama's Bama. Georgia's still kind of a phony. Kirby Smart's not a great big game coach. He kind of has that Brian Kelly sort of DNA in that way. I think we would have matched up really well with Georgia. So there's a lot of turmoil in terms of the blue bloods of college football. Oregon just lost their coach, which is a team that was kind of on the rise. So I think it's a unique window looking the next 1 to 3 years in terms of the landscape of college football as a whole. If Buckner is the guy, that's something to get super excited about. You've already got a defense implemented, and then I'm just telling you, I feel like that we're 2 to 3 players away at a couple key positions to be like, that's a national championship. You got a national championship culture, winning culture. You got to find a quarterback. You play great defense. I could see it 1 to 3 years.
Super chat. James asked, do we have any information on the salaries for the coaches? I really wish we did. I think that'd be awesome if we got that information. Sorry, Mike?
I was just going to say it's a lot.
Yeah, we don't know it, though. Notre Dame being a private university, they don't have to release that information and don't. The only way you're really going to get any information is if you go to your barber and, his cousin, changed Marcus Freeman's tires or something, and that, he heard that from somebody. Yeah, that's I haven't seen any major news outlets report anything locally. Haven't seen anything reported. Not really a tough thing to get information on. So sorry that we don't have that information, but definitely appreciate the super chat. And with Anthony's comment saying he hates Michigan, I'll sign us off. Mike, appreciate you sticking around for an hour with us.
Buddy. Yeah, stay hydrated.
Yeah, drinking a beer definitely helps that. But all right, appreciate you guys watching. Hit that thumbs up. Go to blueandgold.com at the top of our website. Sign up for our free newsletter. There's a link for that.
You guys have done awesome, dude, covering this stuff.
Appreciate it.
For real.
Appreciate it, Mike. All right. Mike Goolsby, Mike Singer, the Mike Goolsby Show. We're signing off.